The Rams absolutely need to re-sign this free agent. How much will it cost? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, the last NFC team to win a Super Bowl. Don't throw a TV at me, 49ers fan. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade. The Dodgers for Dodgers Nation, SI, 24/7 Sports. Now the Rams for Locked On. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just finished his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. Also, if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Join the party. Trying to get 12,000 subs. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and drop those comments down below. What are your thoughts on the idea of trading Aaron Donald? And do you want to see the Rams re-sign Kevin Dotson? Also, any questions you want to see on the mailbag episode, I'm banking those. We're going to answer those later this week. But before we get started on this show, we got Kevin Dotson, we got Aaron Donald, we got a new jersey the Rams are releasing to fans. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, Travis, the dust is settled on the Super Bowl. Now we're entering what I like to call silly season. And that's when you see pretty wild trade proposals. You got people needing stories to get out there. And Bleacher Report's Alex K, he had a trade proposal where he's sending Aaron Donald to the Cincinnati Bengals for the Bengals 2024 first and fourth round picks. Just look, the answer is no, okay? Because the only reason you would trade Aaron Donald would be, does he want out, one? And two, does he want to finish his career on a Super Bowl contender? Guess what? The Rams are pretty close to being a really legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yes, they are. I don't think that Aaron Donald is the guy that you think about getting rid of to try to make sure that you have whatever it is that you need coming back the other way. This is the guy that's the cornerstone of it. He's not the thing you flip to get a bunch of things that you need to finish the deal. Here's the one thing that I will throw out there. The answer is no, they're not going to do that. But you do listen, because if you can get a first and a fourth, maybe you can get a couple of firsts. Maybe you could, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden there is a number where you go, yeah, okay, we got to do that. It's certainly not this. It's not this at all. There was a speculation that the Warriors made an offer for LeBron James at the deadline this year. You got to listen. The answer is probably no. The answer for a player like Aaron Donald, who spent his entire career in one uniform, is probably no. But you take the call. You take the call, because the guys that spend their career in one uniform are few and far between. Like, think about the people here in town. You're talking about Magic Johnson. You're talking about Kobe Bryant. You're talking about Clayton Kershaw. There's just not a lot of those guys, and Aaron Donald's going to be one of those guys more than likely.
Exactly. You add the fact that he's an iconic player who's a Mount Rushmore Ram. But for me, all those are great, and that definitely is a factor for me. But it's the fact that he is showing no signs of slowing down. He just made his 8th All-Pro. He just made another Pro Bowl. If you look at his numbers, 53 tackles, 16 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks, and 31 pressures. And the reality for me is that Aaron Donald is worth more than the 18th pick in the draft, even though it is a first-round pick. Also, if you're looking to trade someone and you're trying to win the Super Bowl, the question is, can you upgrade at the position? You never replace a player unless you know you can find an upgrade. Who's the upgrade over AD? He's not Shohei Ohtani that can pitch and hit, but he's a guy that really is 2 players in one because the double and triple teams that he commands.
Yeah, you need to get better at spots like you mentioned, right? The Rams in particular need to get better on defense. I would like to hear the scenario where taking number 99 off the defense makes you better. Doesn't exist, right? If this were something that was, a noticeable decline, something that all of a sudden, okay, Aaron Donald for the 10 years or whatever the number is that he's been in the league, and he's been an A+ to an A quadruple plus, and all of a sudden you're coming off a year where he was a B, maybe think about it a little bit. He wasn't. He was still an A+. He was still one of these guys that's performing at a high level. The defense is the thing I think that needs to get better for the Rams to go from where they were last season to where they want to go next season. I think the two areas that, if there's offense, defense, and special teams is a huge need of improvement, but the next stop is probably the defense, and your defense is not better without Aaron Donald. It's just not. Even with, look, like you said, with the 18th pick, the 18th pick is one thing. If this were a top 5 pick, then maybe it's slightly different. But, the 18th pick comes with some risk. I know it's a first rounder along the way, but if you had an opportunity to take one of the 2 or 3 best players in the draft, maybe it's a little different. You're not getting that at 18.
Yeah, and I think the scenario for Aaron Donald to be traded would have been if the Rams had really struggled last season and showed no signs of life. If they had all these busts that they drafted and they knew they were in for a pretty serious rebuild, then I think, okay, you work with Aaron Donald to get him to the destination that he wants to land. I've heard the rumors about him in Pittsburgh for so many years. It feels like he's happy in Los Angeles because you know what? He is a made man. You saw him flash that Super Bowl ring on his Instagram story a few days, a little shot at the San Francisco 49ers. He has already solidified his status as an all-time great. He has his Super Bowl trophy. He can ride off into the sunset in Los Angeles and not have to accomplish anything else. But I will say, to your point about just doing your due diligence and listening, and if you get a call from the area code 513, should you pick it up? Absolutely. You want to maintain those relationships. Absolutely. You owe it to yourself to listen. But the same token, this is Aaron Donald we're talking about. This is someone that is going to have a statue outside of SoFi Stadium one day. And he's been such a big part of this franchise. But I will say, Branch Rickey, what do you always say? It's always better to trade someone a year too early rather than a year too late. Aaron Donald is the exception to this rule, though.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think that the idea of, get out while you can, okay, fine, but the Rams are still close enough. They're still close enough to competing for a title along the way. But I want to say it again. If the phone rings and the answer is a first and a fourth, you say, oh, hey, man, I really appreciate the call, but you're not even in the universe of where you would be to get something like this done. It would take 3 or 4 first-round picks. What's the worst they can do? Yeah, we can't do that. Okay, cool. Talk to you next time. They might say yes. They might, the guy on the other end of the line might be desperate. The guy on the other end of the line may be trying to say, like, what does he care if the picks are 3 years from now, 4 years from now, that they get that deal, that he's trying to save his job now, right? You never know what the mindset of that other person is. So if they're coming in with a first and a fourth, maybe you can get multiple firsts. Maybe you can get multiple firsts and seconds and thirds. So, I don't think it's a bad idea to hit the ball back at the other guy and see what he says, but I don't think either side is willing to do what it would take to get Aaron Donald out of Los Angeles.
Travis, that's a great point. You guys love your Rams. Teams love their teams, but you have no idea the conversations they're having with organizations around the league about players that you think are untouchable. I guarantee you that with the exception of very few players, all players are available to an extent, right? Everything has a price, and you would be shocked to know how much GMs and people out there having conversations about their players. But yeah, for me, like I said, this team could win next year. Aaron Donald's going to be a big part of that. And really the point of this take is this whole segment is, look, just get ready for silly season, okay?
Yeah.
For no reason whatsoever, you're going to see Matthew Stafford floated in trades. You're going to see Cooper Kupp floated in trades. Aaron Donald floated for trades. Just be ready for silly season. Then we'll hit the draft and things will stabilize. But will the Rams bring back this key free agent? How much is it going to cost? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, let's talk about FanDuel, D-Max. Some of these guys that we're talking about trading, the NBA always has a ton of guys that you'd be shocked to see go. So why not get down, right? Why not get your buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook? Because right now, New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. I want to read that again because that's unbelievable. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is unreal. And of course, you can bet on all your your favorite NBA players and your favorite NBA teams with quick bets, live same game parlays, exclusive props, and more. And go look at some future odds, right? Make the playoffs, make the play-in, make a run to the championship game. It's all right there on FanDuel, and you're going to have a great time doing it. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
And we are off running here on Locked On Rams. Think of making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode. We appreciate you guys. And you can join the Everyday Listeners Club too. Membership is 100% free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams all off season long. Now, Travis, here in our second segment, we're talking about Kevin Dotson. So Kevin Dotson, he was an absolute revelation for the Rams in the past season. They traded for him from Pittsburgh. You wondered, okay, would he get a chance to start? When he got that chance, he never looked back, and he was one of the best linemen in the sport in 2023. And the PFF projections were just released, and they expect Kevin Dotson to get a 4-year deal that'll pay him $17.25 million a year. So we're talking $69 million with $41.25 million being fully guaranteed. They have him as their 23rd overall free agent. So that is a very steep price. So they're going to have to really decide if they really want to invest in Kevin Dotson.
Yeah, it is a steep price, but I think he's also a very important player. Let's go back to the beginning of the season when they acquired Kevin Dotson, and it was kind of like a shoulder shrug, like, yeah, okay, cool. They got a little depth at offensive line. Cool. Maybe they won't even need him. Well, they needed him, and he was incredibly important to what they did. The Rams' offensive line was good. The Rams offensive line, I think, will continue to get better. Like we've talked about, they have some money to spend. This is a guy that brought a certain level of nastiness to this team, along with Steve Avila, that allows them to be an effective team that runs the ball with Kyren Williams, an effective team with Matthew Stafford to give him the time that he needs to pass the ball. I think that some continuity in these positions is incredibly important. That the Rams did rebuild their offensive line on the fly last year. They got a good performance out of those 5 guys, and I don't think it was a coincidence that Kevin Dotson was a big part of that. Typically, you think of tackles as being kind of the anchors of your offensive line, and Alaric Jackson at left tackle in particular, covering the blind side. But I'm telling you, the Rams' offensive line is built slightly different. Havenstein's been here forever. We saw Andrew Whitworth over on the left side for a long time, but as currently constructed, it's those 3 guys in the middle that seem to be kind of the heartbeat of this line. Rob Havenstein's kind of the gray beard in the group. I say that affectionately as somebody that has a gray beard as well. But those 3 guys in the middle, I think, are important. And if you got to pay Dotson, I think I might do it. I don't know if you're going to find something as good as Kevin Dotson, and you found him last year.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic point, is that when you think about, okay, we're going to pay a lineman, it's probably going to be a left tackle, right? Maybe a right tackle. It's not the sexy tackle position, but as you pointed out, the impact he had from the guard spot along with Rob Havenstein, I mean, they were just nasty, and they were a big reason why, one, Matthew Stafford stayed vertical for most of this year, and he didn't get abused like he did last season, and then 2, Kyren Williams had a massive breakout season. Those guys were integral to having that happen, and then you just look at the fact that this guy was literally the second best guard in all of professional football last season. The NFL, an 85.2 overall grade. That was second for any guard who blocked at least half of his team's snaps this season. So the stats back it up. The eye test backs it up. The nasty that he brought backs it up. And I think, too, is that there was clearly a shift, right? You're going from more of a zone running scheme to that gap scheme, a lot of duo runs, and he fits that mold. And I think if you are going to commit to that moving forward, why not bring in a guy that you have seen it?
Well, look, I like to make things simple when they can be made simple. Who is the most important person on this football team as far as players go? It's Matthew Stafford, right? By a mile. We've seen what it looks like when Matthew Stafford's not there, and it doesn't look very good. He's the most important player that you have on your team. Okay, so if he's the most important player, what's the most important goal? Keep him safe. Keep him in one piece, right? So let's make sure that those 5 guys up front are paid, are happy, are playing well, are the right guys, and the Rams did it last year. And Kevin Dotson was a big part of that. I think you can sometimes get a little too cute thinking, hey, we found a guy once, we can find a guy again. Okay, maybe. What if you don't? What if you miss there? I know you can find running backs. That seems to be something that just about everybody can do. Maybe you can find that third wide receiver. Maybe you can find some other things that work out for you. Offensive lineman is not something I want to try to figure out on the fly. And if you know you have a good one, let's try to keep him.
Exactly. They cannot risk moving backward on the offensive line. No. All the progress that they've made, they can't risk having happened a couple years ago happen again. I think that you also bring up the plug and play aspect. How well did that work for Logan Bruss, right?
Right.
That didn't work
not at all.
Right? I mean, you're not going to always get that. I mean, it'd be great.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to just find a guy that's like, okay, we'll put him in there. All right. I mean, you did it with Avila. Cool. You did it with Dotson, who the Steelers, I would imagine, would probably like to have back at some point. That when you have some, and again, while it is expensive, I don't know if it's what way expensive. It's who's our most important guy, who helps keep him safe. Let's make sure he gets what he needs.
Exactly. And also kudos to Wendell, the offensive line coach. I think he deserves a lot of credit for the improvement of the offensive line. But yeah, ideally, if you could get someone that you can replace him with at 20% the cost, then great. But the likelihood of that is not high. So I think bringing back Kevin Dotson makes a ton of sense. And look, if he does sign somewhere else on a deal where he prices himself out of being a Ram, well, you get a pretty nice compensation pick there. So all in all, this was a major win for Les Snead and company, bringing him in, setting the tone. And I just think that, it's not going to make fans run out there and buy Kevin Dotson jerseys, but it would be a very sensible move, and not the flashiest move, but I think one that makes a lot of sense for this current Rams team. But
I love how you said that, D-Back, that this isn't one of these things that you're calling your buddies and like, look, we re-signed our guard for 4 years. It's not one of those, but it's also one of those reasons that you continue to be, hey, what time are you coming over to watch the playoff game? Right? It's not the thing that gets you super fired up in February, March, April, and May. But by the time you get to November, December, and January, where the games matter the most, and that guy's laying hands on people and moving them out of the way, that's when it becomes a big deal.
Yeah, your phone wasn't blowing up when the Dodgers re-signed Ryan Brazier. Right? But the real ones know how big of an impact a bullpen piece can have in a postseason series. The same goes with offensive linemen. I just honestly went back and watched some of these games. He's so nasty. He's actually fun to watch as an offensive lineman. I really do hope that they seriously consider bringing him back. But coming up next here, the Rams release some new jerseys. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easier to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that big win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, Locked On has launched its own 24/7 YouTube channel for Los Angeles Locked On show. So be sure to check that out. You got Locked On Lakers, Locked On Clippers, Locked On Angels, Locked On Kings, Locked On Chargers. Lots of teams in Los Angeles, so definitely go check that out. Now, here in our third segment, Travis, the Rams were teasing a jersey release. A lot lot of people were wondering, was this a jersey they were going to wear in a game? What was it about? You saw the stitching, and it turns out they're releasing a limited number of Kenny Washington jerseys. Of course, Kenny Washington, he was a historic player, a groundbreaking player. He played just 3 seasons in the NFL, but he made history. He was the first African-American player in the modern era to sign a contract in the NFL. Of course, he went to UCLA Bruins, so shout out to him. And this jersey is really sweet. It's a sweet jersey. It's got the long sleeves, got that kind of golder, little darker shade of yellow there. Just simple, but looks very, very clean. I'd love the cop one.
The odds were off the board that you were going to mention that he was a UCLA Bruin in the opening of this. Like they would not even take your action in Vegas that was coming out of Doug McCain's mouth. That is for sure. It's cool, right? Like there are just some things that are historic. That look, this isn't a jersey that they're going to show up on a Sunday against the 49ers with the team wearing them. But if you love the Rams and you love the history of the NFL and you like, you know, the things that come along with it, this Kenny Washington jersey is really cool. And like you said, I am a sports uniform junkie. I love them. I love talking about them, the ones that I like, the ones that I don't like. And I think when you can find something that is iconic and yet rare at the same time, that's pretty cool. And that's kind of where the Kenny Washington jersey falls into that. Like you said earlier, if you know what that is, you know what that means. And if you don't know, you look at it like, well, that's pretty cool looking. Just the colors on it in and of itself are pretty neat. And that the Rams can kind of stick their foot on the ground in such a historic and important player. It's a really neat thing to do. And I think the jersey just looks great.
Yeah, no, it looks really sweet. You kind of hope that this was some type of in-game uniform just to kind of mix things up. And look, Travis, there is someone, I don't know, I forgot his name, but he literally has commented on over 90% of our shows.
Okay.
And he says, fix the horns. Fix the Rams horns. He doesn't like the new helmet. He likes the old one. So first of all, keep finding the good fight. I mean, just the determination for this guy is very impressive. I warmed up to the new Rams helmet. I think that it's modernized. It looks really good. I think the colors, the royal and soul. But I will say that I am a little disappointed that the Rams haven't at least once per year, especially the fact that you can use your own helmets now. Why haven't they done a throwback jersey?
I hope that they do, and I think that it's probably in the works. I think it's something that we'll probably see. I'm a lot like you, D-Mac. When I first saw the new modern ram horn helmet, I'm like, no. Quite frankly, you look at it at a glance, like that looks like a Charger helmet. It didn't fit. And now I absolutely love it. I think that it looks cool. It's iconic to the Rams. It's exactly what it's always been historically, only with a little bit of a modern twist. But I'm with you. I think that the one, like for instance, my era of Rams football, the one that when I fell in love with the Rams, when I first started really watching this team, caring about this team, was the Vince Ferragamo Rams, right? Where it's almost not quite a navy, but we're getting there. And then the kind of the cartoon yellow Rams horn I thought were really cool. And then you kind of faded into the Eric Dickerson where the blue became a little more royal and a little less navy. I really like that as well. But I think that that's something from that 1980 to about 1990 window I think would be really cool to see again. And if you really wanted to throw it back to like the Fearsome Foursome era where it's white and blue, I wouldn't hate that at all. The only Rams incarnation of their uniform that I didn't really like was the later Kurt Warner years where there's a lot of gold involved. Like this, that just never felt like the Rams to me. The Rams are blue and yellow. It's not gold. They can be blue and white if you want to go back to the 60s and a little before that. But yeah, I've really come to like the modern ones.
Yeah, I remember when we had our uniform episode and I was rigging the uniforms. I actually had the white old school Vince Ferragamo era as my number one. You have the blue.
Yeah.
I think though, you look at the white, they won those 2 Super Bowls in the white. Talk about that dark blue and navy era. I definitely think at the time, the whole uniform aesthetic, teams are going darker. Even the Niners were going darker. All these teams are going darker. I do like the fact they wore those because it just feels like that's how we differentiate the St. Louis Rams from the LA Rams.
No question.
But and having said that about warming up to these current uniforms with the gradient and you got the bone, when they do the rebrand in 2025, if they went to a modern version of the old school uniforms, I would not be mad at that because the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Green Bay Packers, the San Francisco 49ers, the Dallas Cowboys, all those helmets, they haven't changed.
No.
And the Rams helmets were better than those helmets in their peak. And
Yeah.
Frank Gerke, that was the first guy to put that Rams logo on that leather helmet back in the day, or the old school helmet. I mean, I think you kind of go away and you kind of lose that tradition. I mean, Sports Illustrated for years in the 80s, I went back and was like reading that they literally had the Rams as #1 uniform in all of sports for years.
The Rams horns are awesome. Like when you see them, it's like, oh, even if you look at like Colorado State, you're like, yeah, that looks pretty good. Like it just looks like the Ram horn is supposed to look. Like you mentioned, the new uniforms, the bone ones, I think we could maybe leave those in the closet. I don't think we have to break those out anymore. But the rest of it, I'm here for. But like you, D-Mac, if they want to throw it back to an earlier era, I'd be on board. I would love every minute of it.
Yeah, like, you see, remember how the Browns, they were traditional, and then they went crazy with it, with the Browns and the weird stripe, and then they went back to traditional.
Yeah.
Maybe the Rams do that with their 2025 rebrand. And also, it's one of those things, too. It's like, you can't unsee this. It's like I warm up to the Rams helmet, and then someone tells me it looks like 2 bananas. You know what I mean? And I'm like, okay. Eric Dickerson wasn't a fan of them. So I do like them, but I would not be mad at all if they went back to a little more of a traditional look in 2025. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And as always, you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.